All right, hello students. It is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. This is Miss Larson, and I'm going to be explaining what you're doing today. All right, so hopefully you have all grabbed your sewing workbooks, and under Wednesday's section of the Do Now, you have told me what the difference is between a running stitch and a basting stitch, okay? Today we're going to be learning about sewing safety and answering some questions, all right? So I'll be able to list 4 ways to be safe in the sewing room: general rules, scissors, needles, pens, and sewing machine, all right? So difference between a running stitch and a basting stitch. A basting stitch is bigger, right? It's about 2 to 4 stitches per inch. And then a running stitch is a lot smaller where it has 5 or more stitches per inch. Okay. And that's what we've been doing the last couple of days. Remember, at the end of the week, I'm going to grade your running stitch and your basting stitch. When I get back, we're going to do the slip stitch, which is also known as the invisible stitch. And it's how we're going to close our pillows and make some things with that. All right. So now you should have this sewing safety notes in front of you. I'm going to be going over the general rules: scissor safety, pin needle safety, and machine safety. All right. So you need to write down at least one thing in each box for something that's safe and something that's unsafe. All right. So have that in front of you. Ready? Let's go. General rules: safety in the sewing room. You need to make sure we're working quietly. Okay, so we're using sharp things and we don't want to distract each other. When you're talking at your table, you use a quiet voice. If someone was to yell, it's really easy to get scared and end up poking yourself. I've already had people had asked for band-aids and cut themselves with scissors. So we want to be careful and quiet. Okay, roll up your sleeves when using a sewing machine. No loose clothing. Okay, so you don't want any of your clothes to accidentally get stuck in there. And then use your time wisely. Projects need to be completed in the classroom. I'm not going to let y'all take stuff out of the class because I don't want us losing it. And also, when we start using sewing machines, I cannot let you borrow a sewing machine to leave the classroom. All right, so that's general rules. If you want to pause here so that you can write some things down, one in each box, do it. All right. Next, scissor safety. Keep scissors closed when they're not in use. Like I said today, I had a student cut themselves using scissors, so we want to be careful. They're sharp. Please pass scissors with the handles pointed towards the other person. And then fabric scissors, remember, should only be used on fabric, and I'm okay with them being used on thread, but never paper. Fabric scissors are different than regular scissors. If you want regular scissors, ask me. We've got them labeled, okay? But fabric scissors, we need to make sure we don't mess those up, okay? So again, if you want to pause it, so you can write one thing for the safe column and one unsafe. All right. Now we've got pins and needles. So you guys have used needles. You have not used pins yet. So pins normally have the color ball at the top. They don't have a hole or the eye of the needle. Okay. And pins are used to hold our fabric in place when you're sewing. So pins should be held in a pin cushion when not being used. So I've got these tomato looking pin cushions. I also have new ones that are magnetic that we're going to use once you guys start sewing your pillows. We're not going to hold pins or needles in our mouths or skin. So one, because it's unsanitary to do so. And 2, it's unsafe. So it's unsanitary because everyone are using these pins and needles, right? So you don't want those germs in your mouth. And if you were to get distracted or to fall, you don't want to accidentally poke a hole in your mouth because that's gross. And then when you're pinning a project, you want to make sure you point your pins towards the center of your project. The reason why is because if you look at this picture right here, if you did the pointy parts out, it'd be really easy to poke yourself. Okay, so we want our sharp points towards the center. Okay, so again, pause it so you can write down one safe thing I've said and one unsafe thing for pins and needles. All right, and then lastly, we've got machine safety. So you guys haven't used machines yet, but when we get back from break, that's what we're going to start using. We want to make sure we keep our fingers about 1 inch away from the needle. So that we don't accidentally sew our hands, which I've only had one kid ever do that. It was a high schooler. It was my first year of teaching, and she wasn't paying attention, and the needle went through her nail. Her finger was okay, but it was really gross. Make sure that your foot pedal is underneath your machine. Okay, so there's a pedal that you control it, and it needs to be right under you and not somewhere else. Focus only on your project while you're using the machine. Don't be talking to other people, looking at other things. You got to focus on your project, and that's it. Never push or pull the fabric through the machine. So you don't have to do the work. The foot pedal and the needle will do the work. It will naturally pull your fabric. So you want to just be careful with that. And then lastly, take your time, which applies for all sewing. Sometimes you're going to mess up and you need to use a seam ripper. Sometimes you're going to mess up and you're going to get frustrated. So you just need to take a break. Okay. And just take your time, take a deep breath. All right. So now pause it, write something. So we've done the first side of the notes, right? So hopefully this is complete now, right? And now we're going to do the back side of your notes sheet, okay? So what you need to do is read this article, okay? It's 2 pages. You can do it. I'll have printouts as well, or you can keep watching me and I'm going to read through this video, okay? Or you can read it yourself. But here we go. Sewing safety tips, staying safe in the sewing room. After I read this, you're going to tell me 3 to 5 things that you learned about sewing safety that was not included in my slides. All right. So here we go. You can jot things down as I read. Sewing is a fun and relaxing way to express your creativity. It's also an activity that involves a lot of sharp, pointy objects that can be dangerous if not handled with care. Here are some tips that will help you avoid the most common sewing dangers. Keep sharp objects away from your mouth. You've probably seen the image in countless movies and TV shows. A busy fashion designer is working feverishly in her studio, eyes bright with creative fire. She has pencils sticking out of her hair, measuring tape hanging from her neck, and a half dozen straight pins sticking out of her mouth. This is something you should never do. Yes, your mouth can seem like a convenient holding area when your hands are busy, but imagine tripping with those pins or needles in your mouth. It isn't a pretty picture, is it? Pins and needles go in pin cushions. For the sake of convenience, buy a pin cushion that you can wear on your wrist. Scissor safety. The best fabric scissors and sewing shears are razor sharp, but the sharper something is, the more dangerous it can be. So here are some scissor safety tips. It's much too easy to get into the habit of dropping scissors into your lap when you're not through with them, but do this often enough and it's just a matter of time before you stab yourself in the thigh. Instead, when you're not using your scissors, drop them into a container with the blades down. This way you don't have to worry about getting distracted and grabbing the scissors at the wrong end. If you absolutely have to set your scissors down on a flat surface, make sure the blades are closed and the scissors aren't in a position where they could easily get knocked onto the floor. And when you go to pick up the scissors, pay attention to what you're doing. Finally, handing scissors to someone else blades first can lead to mishaps, especially if one of you isn't paying attention. Instead, hand the scissors over handle first. All right, your mood makes a difference. Many people use sewing as a stress reliever. If they're upset, angry, or sad, they might turn to their sewing machine to make themselves feel better. The problem with that is if you're preoccupied and upset, you might not pay the strictest attention to what you're doing. And in the sewing room, any kind of distraction can lead to a mishap. But that's not the only danger. Being upset, preoccupied, or sleepy while trying to sew can lead to crooked cuts, messy stitches, and a finished product that either needs to be tossed out or redone. This doesn't mean you absolutely can't work on a sewing project if you're upset, preoccupied, or tired. However, stick with things that don't require as much focus, at least until you feel more attentive and awake. A few more sewing tips. While the above tips are some of the biggies, there are a few more sewing safety tips you should keep in mind. A seam ripper definitely comes in handy. It helps make the job of removing seams go much faster. However, handle seam rippers with care. Never rip a seam towards your body. Always rip the opposite direction. And make sure your hands don't get in the way. If you drop a pin or needle, pick it up immediately. How many times have you dropped a pin and told yourself you'll pick it up later? How many times have you forgotten all about dropping that pin, especially if it rolled under something? No, it's better to get into the habit of picking up anything you drop, especially if it's sharp or pointy, right away. Don't store things like pins, needles, and scissors, seam rippers, or rotary cutters loose. When you're in a hurry, it can be tempting just to toss things in a drawer or a sewing box. But when you reach to grab something, you could end up getting stabbed, nicked, or cut. It is best to place these items securely in some kind of holder or container. All right, now we have read the article. Lovely. So you're going to go back to your notes and you're going to tell me 3 things you learned from the article that was not covered in my first section of my slides, okay? Please turn in your paper to the metal basket to receive credit. This needs to be written in complete sentences, all right? So write down 3 things, complete sentences, explain yourself, right? If you would like a 4, write down 5 things that you've learned, okay? Or you can look up more things about sewing safety. If you are done early, please don't act a fool. Just sit at your desk and you may work on other work, okay? Or make sure your collage is done, something from another class you may read, but you are not to get up and go to different desks, please. All right. Have a good day. Bye.